Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys about something that this is how I personally address this as a coach, so that we don't neglect the lower body and so that we don't have to spend too many days in the gym. Because something I've always made clear to people, I really don't think we should be lifting more than about 4 days a week. I just don't think that's a good idea. I think anything beyond that should be conditioning work. It should be cardio. It should be things that improve our general fitness. In other words, we really shouldn't be touching weights more often than that. And it's not necessary, but then people say, but Jason, how then do we balance upper and lower body training? Because you always say the lower body should have 2 days. And if upper body has two, how do we get all this stuff in? And that's a good question. But I think the things that people need to remember is the fact that when we do an upper lower, it's just easier to recover from the upper body days. Okay, it is simply easier. So what does that mean? Well, we have more muscles involved, but we can train them all in a shorter period of time. In other words, quads are the biggest muscle in the body. Yes, and I'm fully aware. I could go into the specifics of that. The quad is technically more than one muscle, but you can't isolate them from each other. So we treat it as one muscle group. Does that make sense? So again, minor point of nuance, but from a practical perspective is completely irrelevant. Doesn't matter for the person training to know that. It's just completely irrelevant, right? So yes, it's the biggest muscle in the body, then glutes and calves and hamstrings. They're all pretty much bigger than every muscle in the upper body. Every one of those is. And then delts are the largest upper body muscle. So you see where we're going with this? All right. It's hard to superset a lot of the big movements for the lower body. You can some of the movements, and I do. Okay. I think particularly when we start going to smaller quad exercises, like any sort of machine work, anything that's not a back squat or a front squat, right? We can do hamstring work supersetted with it. But generally, a lot of these big movements, we've got to do them on their own, and then we've got to recover between sets. All right, so that can drag the workouts out just as long, but really we just got to train the quads, glutes, adductors, hamstrings, quads. Right? I think I said quads twice. All right, but that's what we have to do. We can get all that done, in a certain period of time, and then people say, well, what about upper body? There's more muscles, and you're right. Because technically it would be about the same muscles if we took maybe the arms out of the equation. But once you start adding biceps, triceps, forearms, that starts adding more muscles. If it was just, the back, which would be lats, traps, all that stuff, the delts, pecs, it would actually be about the same number of muscles. But here's the thing. They're not as taxing cardiovascularly. In other words, a set of bench press or a set of pull-ups doesn't tax your system as much as a set of squats or deadlifts does. And I mean, we could even talk about a Romanian deadlift. It doesn't have to be your conventional. It doesn't tax the body as much. It doesn't tax the cardiovascular system as much. We can superset that stuff. And all the data we have shows that if anything, performance is maintained. In other words, if you do a pull-up or a row after every set of bench, it does not negatively affect your next set of bench press. Okay, we can double down on our volume. In other words, we don't need to just do one exercise and rest. We can superset our entire upper body. I do. I almost always do a bicep exercise right after a tricep. I almost always do a back exercise after a chest exercise. Just down the road. Any sort of press, I personally like to do a set of pulls right behind. All right, we get twice as much work in the same amount of time. This allows us to do it. Now, people will say, but isn't that a lot of volume for the upper? It is, but it's not really more time. And keep in mind, from a recovery perspective, okay, here we go. From a recovery perspective, it's about the same, maybe even less. In other words, if you came in and did 3 sets of really intense sets of squats and then deadlifts, and again, it does not have to be a conventional. Let's even take it to an RDL, a little bit easier. That is going to be more taxing than if you did 3 sets of benching and 3 sets of pull-ups. Way more taxing to your system. So when it's all done, I really don't think that the higher volumes of the upper body sessions, if every muscle in the upper body, say, gets, 8 to 10 really high quality sets, versus the lower body getting the same amount, I think the lower body would take more to recover from. So we're not losing anything on the recovery. And if you can superset all of it, you can squeeze all of it in. This is why I don't think we need to break the upper body up. Now, can you successfully do so? Yeah, but if you do, I think you need to take everything down to once a week. Okay? That's where 3-day-a-week training works. And if you want a 3-day-a-week frequency, something like a push-pull legs works. And I know people like that, but honestly, I think you're shortchanging the benefits of supersets. I really think that is not the best way to go. What I would personally do, these days, as I get more advanced as a coach, just so we can benefit from getting those supersets and quality stuff in, if I was going to break the upper body up, I would probably do a chest and a back session, right? And then you could have an arm and a shoulder session, okay? And granted, that's going to be a lot of shoulder work because all of this stuff works shoulders. And I think that's something people forget. I think people put too much effort into delt volume, and if they're doing enough pressing and pulling, your delts are getting a ton of work. Find 1 or 2 exercises to finish it, right? You'll be fine. Especially if you're doing incline benching and stuff also, like that's a lot of shoulder work. If you're doing rowing, I might recommend people go in that direction. Am I saying you can't do a 3-day-a-week push-pull legs? No, I know plenty of people who've been vastly successful on that for years and years. It's usually guys who've been training a real long time. I think people who've built a really big base can get away with that style of training, who have a really good work capacity, but they're hammering everything all at once. But they're also probably deadlifting on the back day. So their pull day is like deadlifts, rows, pull-ups. Maybe they do their biceps on that day. But I feel like it's so much more efficient with your gym time if you can do stuff with opposing muscle groups, and I feel like you lose all of that if you train that way, right? It requires you to really be in the gym longer for the same amount of work. Again, just my opinion. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's why I don't usually advocate that sort of thing. And I'm not saying it's wrong. Plenty of guys are successful at it. I'm just looking at, good use of your time versus the amount of muscle stimulus that you get out of it. And that's it. Nothing more. Nothing more, nothing less. But I think the thing is, you can compensate for the volume of the upper body by just supersetting everything and still do an upper lower. Work every muscle in your body twice a week. That means they get 5 days off to recover. And I think it works really well. It's generally what I do. It's generally what I program. It's how I like to train. And I've gravitated more and more towards that the longer I've coached. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.